Well, I guess we can say good afternoon by about a minute. Welcome to the East Tennessee Historical Society's first November Brown Bag Lecture. I'm here at the History Center, and my name is Lisa Oakley. I'm Vice President and Curator of Education, and I am standing in for Dr. Warren Doctor today, who is under the weather and getting better, so that's what's important. But I wanted to just say a few words. Number one, again, thank you for coming. If you are not a member and want to find out more about what we offer and find out about our programming, there are a number of ways to do that. Of course, the best way is to join, but also you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube, and there will be a video presentation of this on YouTube in the next while, and you can go back and watch all of our prior brown bag programs. So it's a great resource, and we try to remind people that they're there. So let other folks know if you enjoy what we offer that they can watch either on Facebook Live on the day of the event or watch it later on YouTube. But I did want to also mention our sponsor for our brown bag series, and that's First Bank, as well as support from our East Tennessee Historical Society board member Bob Marquis, and we really appreciate that. It allows us to be able to provide these programs for you all at least once or twice a month. So before we get started with today's lecture, let me just kind of hit some highlights about some things coming this month. Some of y'all may have heard about our East Tennessee Roots and Resources Genealogy Conference coming up. If you're interested, there is no registration for the Friday night, November 7th keynote address with Chuck Sherrill from Nashville, who was our former state librarian and archivist, and still is very active there at TSLA, and he will be coming to present that evening. There's no registration. Please just attend, and I don't remember the exact time. I think it's at 5:30. Let me look and see. They're 4 o'clock. There are walking tours, and basically tours of the building. There's a reception at 5, and then the welcome and keynote is at 6. And then just go online. We have some flyers at the back for Saturday's events. You do need to register for which sessions that you want to attend. There are still some open seats, not many, but if you're interested in attending, please go in and register, and that may line you up for a waiting list, so please go ahead and do that as soon as possible if it does fill, and then it will let you know and prompt when you move up the waiting list. And believe me, that does happen. Things come up and people do go in and cancel. So we hope to see you here for that workshop, and I know Ann is going to be presenting. And then William Isom will be joining us. I will be presenting with him for a session on doing African American genealogy, Black family genealogy, and our research right now is concentrating on the Reconstruction era and earlier, and we're going to talk about the records we found here in this building with interns and doing research and consulting and talking with William. So after the talk today with what Dr. Black is talking about, if that's something you want to learn about more, come and hear William's talk too about his family's history and about the community history that they're working with in Black and Appalachia for schools, as well as community churches and some other projects they're doing, as well as family history and genealogy. So, and there are a number of other presentations as well, and we will be telling some new and exciting stories about our own, the Historical Society's genealogical programming coming up as well. Then on November the 16th, we have a Sunday afternoon lecture, Land of Everlasting Hills, George Massa, Jim Thompson, and the photographs that helped save the Great Smoky Mountains and blaze the Appalachian Trail with Ren and Helen Davis, and that's from the East Tennessee History Center. And Eric Dawson has been working, the manager of the McClung Collection, has been working with them on coming and doing this presentation, so we're all excited to hear that. November 20th at 5:30 will be Ray Hill, a new UT Press book on Feud and Son of Tennessee on Senator Kenneth McKellar. And then we will have a family event on November 22nd, which will be a book launch for one of our beloved librarians here in the East Tennessee History Center. We're coming together to feature and to celebrate her new publication, A Day with Red and Me, and it'll start at 11, and it is on November the 22nd for all the family to come. We'll have activities. She will be sharing some about the book, and so we have plenty to offer. And the last thing I'll mention is, of course, our new exhibition that just opened. It is here from the Birthplace of Country Music with the support from Jenny Boyd and from Donna Davis have sponsored it to come here. I've endured women in old-time music, so I hope you'll have a chance to see that exhibit before you leave today and come back and see it at any time. So, without further ado, we're going to get around to what we're here for today, and that is our presentation from Dr. Harold Black. He's Emeritus Professor of Finance at the University of Tennessee. His undergraduate degree is from the University of Georgia, where its Terry College of Business has endowed a named professorship in his honor, and the university has named its new freshman dormitory for him, and two of the three others who integrated its freshman class in 1962, so a history maker. And we appreciate all you have done and what you're going to be sharing with us today about your family history. The numerous accolades and honors Dr. Black received over his distinguished career began with his appointment by President Carter to serve on the First National Credit Union Administration Board and continue through his December 2023 commencement address delivered to his granddaughter's graduation class from the University of Georgia. History just pulls all the way through. He has served on the boards of two of the nation's largest financial institutions, and his consulting clients are among the leading law firms and financial institutions in the country. In September 2022, the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and Middle Tennessee State University sponsored the Dr. Harold A. Black Academic Conference to honor his academic research. Now, the East Tennessee Historical Society is particularly appreciative of Dr. Black's years of service on our board of directors. History's always been something that's meant a lot to him, and we appreciate his years of support. And his commitment to family history and genealogical research continues to influence our work today, and hopefully will inspire you all. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Black, for being here.
Thanks, Lisa. That's my dad up there. I was told I could have put all of this in PowerPoint, but what the hell? I'm 80 years old. What do I know, right? So you just have to pardon me and be a little patient. I'm glad to see you here. It sort of reminds me of the attendance at my last class at UT. When I was on the board of this place, virtually everyone in there knew of their immigrant ancestor, the first one in their family to set foot in this country. And they basically looked at me and said, well, we're sorry, Harold, we know we can't find yours because, like most black people who were from slaves in this country, our recorded history really didn't start until the 1870 census. But I went au contraire, because both of my mother's great-grandfathers were white. And so we set out to see if we could find the immigrant ancestor. Now, on my dad's side of the family, we can't, because his father was an orphan, and he actually did not know his maternal grandparents. So we can dispense with Dad. What am I doing? And Dad's siblings. I will say one thing. Hello, Dennis. This is a remarkable family because his parents did not have a formal education. His mother was a domestic. His father drove a coal truck, which is what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I don't think that occupation exists anymore. But his mother was a domestic, and she would not allow any of her girls, there they are, my aunts on the front row, to do any housework at all. The boys did all the housework. My father obviously didn't do the cooking. And the reason was very simple. She said she was not raising the next generation of domestics. And so all of these people went to college and they all graduated. Okay? All the women, and they all went to HBCUs. All of the women became school teachers. Dad was an agricultural extension agent who later became a school teacher, who became an elementary school principal, who then became a railway mail clerk and became a postal clerk, working at night while teaching full-time in the Atlanta public school system. He retired from 2 full-time jobs. One brother was an attorney who became a municipal judge. One brother became a lifer in the U.S. Air Force, and the other brother was a small businessman in their hometown of Americus, Georgia. That's my dad's family. So let's dispense with them. Now, my mother's family, her father is Alonzo Barfield. Now, we called him Pa. Both of Pa's grandparents were mulatto, meaning they had a white father. Now, he's Alonzo Barfield. And so we decided that we were going to look at his history, but the family reunion said of his father, William Barfield, little was known. Well, here's what my mother told me. My mother was the family historian. She said that William was sold into slavery from Jones County, no, Bibb County, which is next door, Macon, Georgia, into Camden County. Well, I knew immediately that William was not a good slave because Camden County had the highest mortality rates of slaves than any other county in the state of Georgia because the plantations were rice plantations and the slaves worked in water. And you probably know about the high mortality rates in the Caribbean and in Louisiana and Arkansas where they worked in water there too. But Mother told me that after the war, William walks back to Jones County and marries Martha Bonner. And so since we couldn't find any information on William Barfield, we looked to see if we could find anything on Martha Bonner. And lo and behold, there is their marriage license on April 12th, 1866. And guess what it says? It is the marriage of Martha Bonner to William Parrish. I showed that to my mother and she says, "We're Parrishes?" I said, "Not quite, Mother. You will note that you can't read this, but the little yellow says George Bonner. George Bonner is Martha Bonner's father. And you will see down here in the green, William Parrish. These are the freemen who are working for R.W. Bonner in Griswoldville, Georgia, which is in Jones County. And R.W. Bonner had a factory there. Griswoldville, by the way, is known because it is the only other place in which there was a battle between Sherman and the Confederates south of Atlanta. The militia mustered up a group of young boys and old men, and they form a line of battle. And Sherman's army, by the way, commanded by that wing by William O. Howard, by Oliver O. Howard, Howard University, told them to go home. And they refused to. And it only took one volley from the Union Army to make them go home. Okay? Now, it turns out that when we go to the 1890 census, that William Parrish is now William Barfield. And he was actually on the voter rolls up through 1870, because remember, blacks could vote during Reconstruction. He was there as William Parrish, but then he shows up as William Barfield. Mother said, "What do you think happened?" I said, "Here is what I conjecture, my conjecture is. that when William shows up to marry Martha, he is asked, well, William, what is your last name? Because you recall, slaves didn't have last names. And I could not find any slave owners or anyone else except in a little town called Red Rock in the northern part of the county, anyone named Barfield. Here's what I think happened. I think William said the first name that came to his mind because I found slaveholder in Jones County, in Bibb County, and a slaveholder in Camden County. And I believe that he was owned in Bibb County by a parish. And because he was such a troublemaker, he was sent to this person's relative who was a slave owner in Camden County. And I believe firmly that when William thought about it, he said, why should I name myself after that SOB, and changed his name? Now, I have some evidence of that because my mother's maternal grandmother was living at the home house in Gray, Georgia, and I talked to her. She died when I was 6 years old. And she was a field slave. And she said that the field, and by the way, there's a historical record of this. There's a book called Slaves in the Family. They're not blood relatives, but they are house slaves who took the owner's name. So if you usually saw a black person with the plantation owner's name, they were generally house slaves. The field slaves wouldn't do that. And here's what she said. She said they were not physically mistreated, but they were fed from hog troughs in the fields. And they would never take the owner's name. Okay? So that's the parishes. Now the Barfields. Here's what's significant about that. We called him Pa. He had 5 sisters. They're his sisters. Now, because he has 5 sisters, he has 2 children, and I'll show you those in a second. My mother, my Aunt Dolly, and my uncle's son. The son was called Son. Okay? And Uncle's son had moved to Brooklyn as a mechanic, had 2 daughters. So the Barfield name died out because I had asked my mother, there are all of these tolls, and I'll tell you about the tolls, that's her mother's side, in a second. Why aren't there any Barfields? Mother said, I have no clue. Well, this is the reason why. But because of this, it's interesting, if you go to Jones County, there are plenty of tolls, and virtually all of them are blue-collar, hard-working, salt of the earth, wonderful people. One of my dearest friends is a cousin that I hunt with, Terry. I am not taking that call. All right. But the influential blacks in the county are my relatives through my mother's side. For instance, one of the past superintendents of the public school systems is one of our cousins. A portion of the highway running through Gray is named after one of the cousins. It's the Herman E. Black Memorial Highway. And you said, hold it, black? Yes. I always tell people there are blacks on both sides of my family because these blacks are from my mother's side because of the little boy here. This picture is in Dr. Barbara Krauthammer's book that shows pictures of slaves, ex-slaves, right? And the woman is Minerva Black, and that's my uncle Frank Butler Black, who married Aunt Sally, one of my grandfather's sisters, okay? So she is Sally Barfield Black. And the blacks of Jones County come from that union. But also, the big plantation in Jones County is the Jarrow Plantation. And there is my Aunt Lizzie, who is Lizzie Barfield Jarrow. Okay? So, my grandfather could pass for white. All right? And he and my grandmother went to the train station to come visit us in Atlanta, and the conductor told my grandfather he had to sit in the white coach. And he said, I'm a colored man. And the conductor said, you may know that, but nobody else does. So you're going to have to sit in the colored coach. She sits in the Negro coach. And he said, no, I guess we'll go home. Oh, wow. And they called us and said that we're not coming. Okay? So people said, if he could pass for white, why didn't he? That's why he didn't. Mary Louise Tolles. She is a beautiful woman. Okay? I don't know. I wouldn't pass for white either. Sorry. This is Pop Milas, her father. Milas Tolles, Towles. Okay? Now, Pop Milas is the reason that Jones County is populated with 1,000 Towles. And I'll get to that in a second. Pop Milas' father was Seth Tolles. Seth was a sergeant in the 6th Georgia. Okay? All right. Seth didn't own any slaves. So you're saying, well, okay, it's fine. How in the world does Pop Milas then exist? And by the way, I'll tell you one thing about Seth Tolles. Once again, from my mother. After the war, Seth gets married, has 2 daughters. Obviously, he marries a white woman, has 2 daughters. Mother said that every other Sunday that Seth would go have dinner at Pop Milas' house, and then the following Monday would put his black grandchildren in the wagon and take them into town to buy them stuff. Just think about this. We're talking about 1880, 1890, right? And so Mother told me that Seth Tolles never disavowed his black son and his black son's family, because that was his son and his grandchildren. And so a lot of people may have animus about their white ancestors. I don't have any as far as Seth Tolles is concerned. Now, I will do this and then I will link all this stuff together. This is my grandmother, Mary Tolles' graduation picture from Ballard Normal High School in Macon, Georgia in 1906. The pretty lady, 1, 2, 3 from the right, is my grandmother, Mary. Okay? I asked there was no black high school in Jones County, Georgia. So I asked Mother, I said, how did Pop Milas, who's illiterate, I have the original deed to our farm, and we have 126 acres in Jones County. I spend half my time down there now. I said, how did Pop Milas afford to send Mary to boarding school? Mother said, he was an entrepreneur. I said, well, what did that mean? She said, he was a bootlegger. You know what the bad thing is? We don't have his recipe, or else, you know, we could do it in Uncle Nearest, right? And make a whole lot of money. I don't know if you're a bourbon drinker. I am not. But I did have a taste of Uncle Nearest. And if I were a drinker, that's what I would drink. Now, What's remarkable about this picture is that everyone in there's grandparents was a slave who didn't have a last name, who didn't have an education, who, many didn't have any skills other than being farm laborers. And yet, they're their daughters. My mother said that as part of the curriculum, they taught them Greek.
My goodness.
My goodness is right. That's my Aunt Dolly and her first husband, Bill. Now, here's the interesting thing. Her name is Dolly, but yet when she went off and got a 2-year degree, all of a sudden her diploma says her name is Dorothy. Here is Uncle's son, whose name is Willie, after William Barfield. And he was called Bill instead of Willie because their 3 siblings decided that their names sounded too country. Because here's my mama. Yeah. This is her college graduation picture. She is Fort Valley State University's first 4-year graduate. Received their very first 4-year degree. The Alumni Association is named after her. And she made, and mother, please forgive me. Her first name is Maddie. But she never was called Maddie. She was never M. Harriet Black. In Gray, they all called her Shug, which was short for sugar. Now, I asked her, did they call you that because you were so white? There I am with my folks. That's one of my favorite pictures. Now, that's my mother at 101.
Oh, Marcel. Wow.
Still had her mind. The remarkable thing is she had her teeth too. Okay, so there are the family photos. But what I want to do now is to go and talk about Seth Tolles. I think actually what I want to do first is to show you a couple of things, if I can find them. Here is, there's one more in here. Here is Pop Miles, right? Miles Tolles. It is the 1880 census. You notice that the race is mulatto, okay? And when we go down, his wife is Harriet with 2 T's. My mother is Harriet with 1 T. And we have the first 2 children, okay? Now, I want to jump to the 1990 census, and here it is. And, whoops, come on down. They misspell it, obviously. And by the way, because of the misspelling of the census taker, we have relatives that are Tolles who live in South Georgia. Okay? Now, here's Pop Miles. He is now black. There's no more mulatto race being used. And he's being called black. He's not a Negro. He's not colored. But the census says that he is black. Here's what's significant about this. There's Harriet with 1 T, my mother's name. And look at the family. That's where all of the Tolles of Jones County come from. I have shared this history with them, right? Because they didn't know any of it. Okay? All right. So, here is now the genealogy of Seth Tolles. Go here. All right. Oops. Let's try that again. See, I told you I'm not very good at this. Well, where does it say full screen? All right. You see Seth? He's Pop Malice's father. He's born in 1834. He dies in 1903. He's buried in Westview Cemetery in Atlanta in the Confederate section. Westview Cemetery is less than 1 mile from my home house in Atlanta where we grew up.
My grandparents are buried there also.
Is that right? Well, why are your grandparents there? Do you know?
Well, because our Oakland cemetery plot was too small for everyone.
Okay. Well, when I told Mother this, she says, "You mean Seth Tolles is buried over there?" And of course, when we were growing up, we could not be buried over there, right? It was all white. Okay. My son and my nephew have visited Seth, and they visit him occasionally to give him a running commentary about how the family is. The reason Seth Tolles is there is because the 6th Georgia fought in action there at the Battle of Peachtree Creek. And you know, yes, sir.
You say close to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you know how things were, that when they had the battle, they basically just dug a hole and just dumped everybody in there. And so I postulated that Seth wanted to be buried with his buddies, and that's why he's there, rather than at a cemetery in Jones County, Georgia. Well, look, Seth's parents, so Seth John Tolles, Mary Wilson, not the Mary Wilson of the Supremes, and his sister, this is the important thing, Mary Frances Tolles married Tom Fitzgerald of the Gerald Plantation and went to live on the plantation. Pop Malice's mother was a cook on the Gerald Plantation. Undoubtedly, Seth goes to visit his sister, has an affair with the cook, produces Pop Malice. So that's that connection. Now, unfortunately, Pop Malice's mother died in complications associated with childbirth. So he really, really never knew his mother. But once again, he knew his father, because his father obviously still visited him when he was enslaved on the Gerald Plantation. Right? But interestingly enough, because of that, Pop Malice wasn't Phil Hand, but instead of taking the Gerald name, he took his father's name. So let's trace this genealogy. Goes to Seth John Tolles, who served in Tucker's South Carolina militia in the War of 1812. Well, here is the roster of Tucker's South Carolina regiment in the War of 1812. And let's go down, and lo and behold, this is the roster, and this is the amazing thing about the internet, isn't it? That when we do all of this, these are the people that are serving in Tucker's regiment. And lo and behold, here, let's go back to full screen, if I can do this. Thanks for putting up with me. See these last 3 names? There, and look at this one up here, Tolls. And John Tolles, Lloyd Tolles, and there's Seth Tolles. Okay? Serving in Tucker's South Carolina regiment in the War of 1812. Now, that piqued an interest, and so I look to see if I could find any genealogy of Tolles in South Carolina, and lo and behold, there's an entire history of the Tolles of South Carolina. Let's go back here now. So we have that Seth Tolles, and then we have Oliver Tolles, who is a captain in the South Carolina 3rd Regiment in the Revolutionary War. Here's the significant thing about him. It's also in the South Carolina record, where I pull some of this from, is that he and his slave were killed by Tories. As a matter of fact, in the South Carolina record, they identify the leader of the Tories who killed him and his slave. And this was done, the Tories were the American colonists who were loyal to the British. And what's interesting was that he was killed during the winter when he had gone home, as most of them did during that period of time, because the conditions were such, the roads were such, that it was almost impossible to campaign. So he had gone home, and he was working with his slave, and his home gets raided, and they get killed. Then we have John Tolles, married to Margaret, and you notice he's born in Middlesex, Virginia, and in 1712. This is a little before the Revolutionary War. And then his father is Stokely Tolles, married to Anne, born also in Virginia in 1688. And then his father is Henry Tolles, married to Anne, who's born in Liverpool, England in 1651 and dies in Virginia in 1721. That's my immigrant ancestor. I am so tempted to go to Liverpool, England, find the Tolles and say, I'm your American cousin. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know, like, how did you get so deep? Like, how did you, what resources were you?
First of all, the library was really, really helpful in this. Lisa, who was the library person who was on our board? The curator of whatever.
Steve Cobb?
Yes, he was really. Oh, hello there. You are Steve. Hello. It's all his fault. Actually, George Schweitzer. How could I forget that name? My best friend in academics is Bob Schweitzer. George Schweitzer, who taught the genealogy class, was also on the board. And George was really helpful. And then I got the parish connection from the library person. Thank you very much. And then we have the Mormons, who are incredibly helpful. They have all of this information in their database. Okay. Oh, yes. It's probably the most extensive genealogy information available. The public library was incredibly helpful because through the public library, you can access all of the census records. Okay? Now, if you don't have this white ancestry, you've got a problem. Because black folks didn't have names prior to emancipation. Okay? So for instance, when I was looking for William, I was looking at the slave records, and there was a William, a Willie, a Bill, and they were all about the same age on the parish plantation. But we don't know the father of any of them. We don't know the mother of any of them because there are no birth records, there are no marriage records or anything like that. Now, look, Alex Haley was one of my closest friends. My youngest granddaughter, the one whose commencement at the University of Georgia, where I was a speaker, is named Haley. Because when Erica, my daughter, was here getting her MBA, we would go to the farm in Norris. And she loved Alex. And she says, if I have a boy, it's going to be named Alex. And if I have a girl, she's going to be named Haley. So my granddaughter is named Haley Savannah Rose, by the way. The Savannah comes because she was born 12 hours before my father died. And he was on his deathbed. He had told me this. Maybe I'll cry. He had said, I had said I wanted to make it to November 19th. He would have been 89 years old. He says, but I changed my mind. And I said, okay, what is it now? He says, I want to just get to August 30th, which was Erica's due date. The baby comes on the 13th at 6 a.m., 6 p.m., that same day my dad is dead. However, my daughter, who was going to name her daughter Haley, put Savannah in there because my dad is a graduate of Savannah State University. And that was a tribute to my father. He knew that. And he died with a smile on his face. I know it. I'm about to tear up too. So look, that's my family history. That's the immigrant ancestor that I'm able to trace, simply because of the fact that my mother knew the name Seth Tolles. Oh, one other thing. While doing all of this, I found that there is a link to TOLESs in Alabama, and there is a family Tolles history. I have a copy of it in here somewhere, written by a woman who's such and such Tolles such and such in St. Louis, Missouri, and she talks about her relatives all the way to California, right? Meaning, if I go back and look at Henry and look at Henry's sons, he had 3 sons that went south, and 2 of them stayed in South Carolina. 1 went to Georgia. He had another son, or some kin thereof, that went to Alabama, because when I was doing this search, I ran into their online search that went back to Henry. And then in Missouri, her lineage also goes back to Henry. Any other questions?
Well,
Yes.
I'll just say that Accomack County and Northampton County are on the eastern shore of Virginia. They're on the other side of the Chesapeake, and they had no loss of records from the 1600s. And so they've got court records, deeds, tax records, and that's why that's complete there.
Right.
Because there is a lot of...
Is that right?
Northampton County and Accomack County are on the eastern shore. They're part of Virginia, but they're on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay. They had no loss of records back to the 1600s.
And there's this really detailed genealogy of the Tolles from that. And as I said, the original home site, you can still find it on the map, and it's called Tolles Point, Virginia. Yes. Who else? Yes, sir.
Seth John Tolles was 72 when Seth was born.
I think there's a generation missing.
It may be. There well may be. But this is what I could find. Okay. A mathematician here.
Genealogist.
A genealogist here. All right. Anything else? Well, look, thank you very much. I've enjoyed being here. Lisa, thanks for asking me to come. And I hope, if you don't know your own history, and I know most of you probably do, that you will go and explore it. Thank you.